if you could remember the first movie, you are now going to go before the first movie and understand the first movie even more. I don't know if that's I'm saying that's cool stuff.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
Ask any podcaster, any real podcaster. It doesn't matter if you talk to Vin Diesel for a minute or an hour, winning's winning. And we're the true victors today because we're joined by Dominic Toretto himself, the one and only Vin Diesel. Vin, welcome to our binge of Fast and Furious.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here.
We had to start with you for the first film. I mean, this is, truly a classic. 20 years of Fast. I can't believe that. So it's we're really excited to start with you on this first film.
Oh my God, 20 years ago, from the very weekend that the first Fast and Furious opened, so many memories, so many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful memories surrounding that time in my life when this movie was finally coming out. I remember it was supposed to come out in March, and I had gotten a call saying that they wanted to move it to June. And I was like, but I've been waiting for this movie to come out in March. Yeah. They said, no, Vin, that's a good thing that they're moving it to the summer. Of course, it was a great thing.
I love the symmetry now. Like you said, it's meant to be. Obviously, we would have loved to see F9 last year, but the fact that it's going to essentially be 20 years on the dot, that was feels meant to be.
It does feel meant to be. It not only feels meant to be. Again, similar situation last year. I thought it was going to come out in May. I was excited. I told all the fans, and we had to push it a year. But who would have thought last year it would have been a blockbuster release because it's F9. This year, it's a call back to that theatrical experience. Mm-hmm. That theatrical experience we have all missed, and we don't realize how much we've missed. We've been entertained in watching movies on our couch. And we forgot that explosive electric feeling of being in a theater as an audience, as one, as a community, engaged in this spectacle. And you never know how much you miss something until it's gone. And so I'm really proud that Universal is willing to be that blockbuster that comes in and says, let's get back to the movies together.
Of all these interviews, we start by quoting a great man's words. I live my life a quarter mile at a time. Nothing else matters. For those 10 seconds or less, I'm free. So this is a challenge, but how would you sum up this first Fast film in 10 seconds?
I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Kind of perfect.
That is truly perfect. I can't think of a better way to do it.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time. Nothing else matters, not the mortgage, not the store, not my team and all their bullshit. For those 10 seconds or less, I'm free.
If it didn't work, the whole franchise never would have worked. It was that moment that cemented the Fast and Furious into pop culture and then making it the world saga.
Yeah, it is. It's like the moment where you get the heart, not for the first time, but where it really sinks in.
That's
and
right.
It's perfect.
What are you smiling about?
Dude, I almost had you.
What's so exciting about F9 is we revisit that moment from a different perspective.
Ooh.
Oh, that's exciting.
Well, that's a tease. That's an A+ tease right there. That's Oh my gosh. I don't want to jump in, but that scene, I had written down to ask you about that scene because I'll admit it. So I had a Fast watch party a couple years ago. A few people that I knew hadn't seen them. I'm like, we're changing this. We're watching Fast 1 and going through them all. And that scene came on, And first, you know, obviously Paul's incredible, kicking it off with his kind of like, I almost had you. And then you walk around the car. I literally said to everyone, I was like, this is movie star stuff right here.
You almost had me. You never had me. You never had your car.
This right here. It's like when you see a scene like that on paper, are you just kind of salivating as like knowing, you know, the potential of what you can do with something like that?
I was so excited by that scene. It was in some ways the biggest scene that we had in the movie because there were the most people around, and the people that were in the scene were real illegal streetcar racers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were feeding with such authentic energy that it made it so much easier for Paul and I to delve into the scene and really rip it apart. We were lucky.
Oh shit, we got cops, 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 cops!
We had started before production prepping for that scene. So one of the things that we did as actors in preparation for that scene was we did go to illegal streetcar races. Now, I grew up in New York City, and in New York City, in Manhattan, you won't see a lot of helicopters. And you definitely won't see helicopters disperse anything, like any kind of illegal streetcar racing. That's not going to happen. But Paul grew up in LA and was accustomed to that. And I wasn't. So I remember when the helicopters came, I'm like, well, which way do you run? And I have this image of Paul and I running over this bridge. Now, we haven't even filmed the movie yet. So we really don't, you know, we're really putting ourselves out there.
Yeah.
And one of the illegal streetcar racers, all great people that ended up forming this, like, legal form of these races, said, get in. And very similar to the scene of Brian saying, get into Dom when he's running in East LA.
Get in!
All those memories, the memories of going to Cuba to better prepare for the character because he owned a Cuban bodega. Yeah. All the, that was the time when I had all the time in the world to prepare like crazy for every single role. But yeah, that'll always stay with me. So that scene that you mentioned where I go, you almost had me, there was a lot that led up to that. And again, it was the crowd there that was so electric and so appropriately authentic that added to that.
So take us back to Fast coming into your life and your initial reaction. I know it took a little bit of convincing. You were kind of like all in, and then you were kind of like, I don't know about this. So kind of take me back through that process.
Yeah, no one would ever think that. Well, part of the reason is you have to understand. So if I've come into this industry, if I'm acting since I'm 7 years old, and I can't get a role and I can't break. And I then go to independent film and become a director and a writer and a producer and do a short film and then do a feature film and go to Cannes with the short and then Sundance with the feature. I'm very precious about trying to do the best work possible at all costs. And so when I was given the script, because Universal, I know this sounds crazy, but Universal ended up releasing or being involved in the release of Pitch Black. And that was the only other movie I had done of that size. And so they said, we got this movie that's about illegal streetcar racing. And we want you to play this character, Dom, who's a tough guy, an outlaw with a heart and a code. Okay, I'm in. And then they described that scene that you see in the first movie where the camera goes through my eye and down my arm and into the engine. And that's the only thing they described. And I said, yes, I'm in. Go! The next day, I'm supposed to go to the premiere in Australia, I believe, for Pitch Black. And I read the script and I go,
Maybe not.
And my father, who is such an important person in my life, is such a purist about art that I got that from him. And so, we grew up in an artist housing in New York City, where if you made more than $10,000 a year, you were kicked out of the building. We were like, we're real artists. And so I'm going, I'm conflicted here because this script is not what I thought it would be. They hire David Ayer. Mm-hmm. That day, they asked me to come in and we do a page by page critique / rewrite, and David Ayer goes off and writes this great script, and the rest is history.
When do you feel like you really got Dom? Was it during that process of going through the rewrites with David Ayer, or was it later? When do you feel like you really were like, okay, this is it?
The irony is I felt like I had gotten what the character wanted to be in the first script, mm-hmm. but I felt that there were things conflicting with his truth. And that's where David Ayer came in. And he said, I remember him saying, the Dom character is so complex. I've never seen anything like it since Alfonso, when Denzel played Alfonso for him. Yeah. And so I kind of appreciated that he was able to see the complexities of the character. I'm sure he didn't imagine we'd be 20 years later releasing Fast 9 and exploring more of this Dom character. I'm sure he didn't. So I got the world and what the world was about, but the character just needed some fine tuning, and some other characters needed some fine tuning as well, like the Letty character, across the board. And I'm just so lucky that they were open to it all, and that they really wanted me to feel great about it and confident about it. And that's not the normal Hollywood story. But my Hollywood story has never been the normal Hollywood story. Being an actor in the 80s and the 90s, as a multicultural actor, there weren't a whole lot of opportunities, which is why I ended up doing my own films like Multifacial. I don't know if you've ever seen Multifacial.
Yep, absolutely.
But the idea that I went down that road, and then this industry that I had been begging to be a part of for 2 decades, more than 2 decades, finally comes and says, we're not going to ask you to audition, we're going to write a role for you in Saving Private Ryan. And so nothing about my journey was typical, I guess. And I'm grateful for that because it's allowed me to be that much more invested in the films that I've been lucky enough to be a part of.
Yeah, it just really shows, like, from the beginning, and you guys have always been great about, everyone's listening to everyone, right? And, like, any concerns, you're hearing it out, and, like, kind of shows that, that could lead to some success. So once you sign on, Paul was already on.
Derek, that's my mantra. So we had done an interview yesterday, and they asked, do you still take notes from the studio? And I take notes from my stand-in. I take notes from the driver. I take notes from the nurse. I take notes from any human that will spend a second to think about this massive piece we're trying to make. I take notes from my 5-year-old kid. I will take notes from anybody. I am not precious.
I'll sync up later with you for my ideas for wrapping up the franchise. We'll talk later. So you're fully on board, and Paul was already signed on. He had worked with Neil and Rob on the Skulls. So then,
that's right.
I mean, this movie doesn't work if that dynamic isn't right. Like it just doesn't. So
true.
Yeah. So what was it like? Was that chemistry just instant there with Paul? Like, obviously, you guys are off going to street races, so clearly you got along pretty good from the beginning.
We got along clearly from the beginning. I first met him at Dodger Stadium. We were testing out our cars. Part of the process of Fast is we've always auditioned are cars. So the cars have been such a significant part and representation of our characters that there is a process of casting, right? Of casting the exact vehicle for the state of mind that the character's in or the journey that the character's going through. But would you go back to that time? We're just coming out of the East Coast, West Coast beef.
Yep.
If you can remember where you are, 1999, this is not common for a New Yorker and a West Coast to kind of find common ground, which in some ways lends itself to that each character's journey in the relationship and the objective of finding that brotherhood. No one would ever associate that, but we were just coming from, it was still popular that there was a divide. We were still getting over the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, and it was still very much present in our lives. There was that. So when I came on, it was me and my New York crew and him and his West Coast crew. And to see that brotherhood formed added something special to the movie.
Hey man, he was in my face.
I'm in your face. I saw an authenticity that was just ripe for the movie industry, just primed for something like this. He, through the years, has always been the one. While I'm off thinking about story or while I'm off thinking about stunts and casting and dynamics and how to realize the impossible, he would often cover us by, owning automotive shops, doing races, actually becoming a racer, a streetcar racer, and then actually running on the track. And he would do that to contribute to the legitimacy of. That's what's in some ways so hard about when he left us, because in some ways, and I know this interview is not supposed to go that way, but he was doing a fundraiser at a garage where he was collecting cars and
Yeah, I mean,
bless him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I said, with doing that oral history, anybody I talked to, I didn't even have to bring up Paul. They would and just, say nothing but, beautiful things.
I know what you're doing.
I owe you a 10-second car.
As important as we talked about that relationship, it was obviously you and Michelle, portraying a very different relationship with Dom and Letty. And, that has just kept on going and become one of, the most recognized, couples in film history, I dare to say.
You look a bit tired. I think you should go upstairs and give me a massage.
Look at all our guests.
How about we go upstairs and you give me a massage?
But talking to her, she said it was funny early on because, you talked about you come from this very, actor, professional actor realm. And she literally said to me, I'm just this crazy girl from Jersey City on her second movie. So what was it like kind of early on, you guys kind of working out this, obviously this now legendary chemistry between you two?
Well, one of the things I was working with David Ayer on was kind of her character as well, because she was from East Coast as well, and she kind of represented where we were from. And as a minority, you want to. That wasn't common in cinema. If you imagine 20 years ago in the 90s that Michelle Rodriguez would be this iconic figure that represents a love in cinema like we have never seen before, you would say, well, you would pick a million other actors, but there is no actor in Hollywood that could boast of a love like Michelle Rodriguez. No one has that. No one's garnered billions of people and audiences around the world that want to ride or die in the way that a Letty character does. Wants to. That's an iconic and something we didn't realize. But when I think about it, and I go back to the first movie, maybe subconsciously there was that dream that would be our world's love story. These kind of non-typical Hollywood types would be the ones. And it was a contrast, a deliberate contrast between the Brian and Mia relationship. The Brian and Mia relationship was more conventional, and the relationship between Dom and Letty was not conventional, and they weren't perfect. And somehow, right when the turn of the millennium, the audience started to lean into that as a representation of what relationships might be in the new millennium.
That is definitely something that stuck out to me. I remember I was 14, I think, when the first movie came out. And so, that blew my mind just to see both Michelle and Jordana like in those roles as these leading women. And it's even rewatching it, it's still cool to me that Letty's involved in the heists and everything like that too. As you evolved that relationship, like Michelle says that she kind of leaves sort of the romantic arc to you to help guide her, and then she's just like down to ride. But what are those conversations like as you're sort of figuring out those beats for Dom and Letty?
I didn't read a lot of reviews, but I heard all the reviews were good from the first one.
Yeah.
And then someone said, I forgot where it was, New York Times or something. Someone said the only crime of Fast and the Furious is we didn't get to explore enough of Dom and Letty. And maybe I kept that in the back of my head, but after the fourth one, when her character was written out of the movie, I can remember right to. I was already saying she will have to be in the movie. Letty will have to be in this mythology in order for us or me or all of us to construct the next trilogy. Mm-hmm. You will need this archetype. This archetype will be needed for this mythology to progress.
Hey, baby. You should be watching from the side. I wouldn't want to get any exhaust on that pretty face.
How about you put your money where your mouth is? It'll be too large. Right here, right now.
If you really think about it, you go through 4, avenging Letty. That brings Dom back.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you go to 5, you end with, when you go to 5, Ilsa Pataki's character is trying to fill in for Letty, and then you realize how much he misses his true soulmate.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 5, Eva Mendes comes in and goes, "Do you believe in ghosts?"
Best moment.
Which, if we're taking notes, I'll take Eva Mendes back. If we're just like throwing in little notes.
No. Just wait for 10.
Oh,
10
let's go.
Let's just say the fact that you guys know that the studio is saying we can't cover all this ground that needs to be covered in just one movie. You can only imagine what is to come.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, getting me excited just talking to you about it. Filming on a Fast 1 is so different from filming on an F9. Like, not even apart from the budgets or the stakes on screen, just like you guys were so under the radar on that first one. So what was it like thinking back on that? We're talking summer 2000. You guys are just, running around LA, going to street races, having a good time. What was that like?
Amazing. I often tell this story because after we made the movie, we went to, I don't know if you remember MTV Spring Break.
Yep.
Yeah.
We went to Mexico for MTV Spring Break, and I remember we had to circle around. We couldn't go to an airport. The plane was about to, whatever. Anyway, but on our way home, we just wanted to go back commercial because we didn't feel too comfortable Paul and I, right? So Paul and I will never forget this. We're sitting on the floor of this airport, bags to the side, legs stretched out. People, thousands of people walking by, walking over us, walking over our legs. And he looks at, now he'd already had some films out, so he was kind of a little more familiar with what was to come. And he said, Vin, take all this in. Take in the fact that all these people are just walking by us. And I said, why? And he said, because when this movie comes out, our anonymity will be gone. And it was so telling.
Yeah.
It was surreal. It was surreal.
He knew.
How he knew something. And I was always in the making, and that's where my mind was. I had just come from directing movies and writing movies. But he had this ability to see. It's like, he would always say, every time we'd come out of a movie, every time we'd come out of a premiere, he'd always say, it would just be me and him for whatever movie it was. The studio would be away from us, and the cast and the crew, and everybody would always give us our moment. And he'd always say, Vin, the best one's still in the can. Oh! You didn't hear the ball! They're going crazy! What do you mean the best one's still in the can?
I can't imagine walking out of Fast Five and thinking like, oh man, we're gonna
There's
top this
more.
one. Like, man, the confidence that takes. I love it. I love that.
Oh my God, it was just so funny. It was and like clockwork every time. All right, Paul. Oh man.
Is it wild to think back, like obviously in recent movies, like we have everything from flying cars to a nuclear submarine. Is it like wild when you sit there and think back, like this started with hijacking some DVD players, like which is like such a 2001 thing,
Yeah.
but it's like quite the origin story of DVD players.
It is. It totally started at a different place, and it started very humble. And I guess that's something that I'm grateful for, that we were able to start from humble beginnings so that you could really connect with these characters without all the spectacle. The spectacle came as the movies needed to start one-upping themselves. Mm-hmm. And as the audience started to expect the unexpected, and they would want to. You go to see Fast, and you see that in a theater for good reason, because you're going to go, something they don't teach in film school. They teach you, and in every script writing class, they teach you all kinds of how to draw emotion, how to create, different archetypes. But nobody teaches you how to create the feeling. Yeah. And that feeling is what Fast is.
Did the first script have that moment for you where you were like, oh my God, like this is insane?
That first script, it did have that moment. That first script, when the car goes over, flips over.
Yeah,
that was done. That was done practical. So you can only imagine how. I mean, if it was done practical, it meant that it had to be done practical. There was no digital option.
Right.
There was no CGI option. So you can only imagine when I saw that, I was like, oh my God.
We're obviously now, 9 films in, 2 more to go. I know you originally said you asked Universal not to make a sequel because you thought it would ruin the ability for that first one to be a classic, which I'm thankful that was not the case. We could report that it's still a classic 9 movies later. So what was that thought process like just for you originally back, then after the success of the first one?
Well, I was a fan of classics. So Rebel Without a Cause, Wild on the Waterfront, or like older movies that were classics. And I had seen movies get sequelized, and quite often studios would just brand the movie. So they would slap the title, and they weren't trying to Francis Ford Coppola the movie. They weren't trying to go that extra level to make sure that you were building off of the existing story and the existing characters and having those characters evolve. You just simply call it whatever the brand thing is, and not evolve the story in an episodic fashion. That's why I said, guys, if you do another one, you're going to jeopardize this first one being a classic. And of course, script was always something very important to me. If I didn't feel comfortable with the script, I was crazy enough to turn down offers that, I remember turning down the offer for Too Fast, Too Furious. And my father, who I just said is this incredible, altruistic, pure artist. You sure you want to do that, son? I thought he was going to say, "Oh, I'm glad you can't be bought. I love that. That's amazing." And he flipped it on me and said, "You sure you want to?" But by doing that, you send a message with your actions that you have to continue with integrity. So if I didn't opt out of being in the second one, I never would have been able to be in a position to become the producer and to have such an incredible role in the thinking. I remember when I did the fourth one, the roles now had reversed. I was saying, you know what, I see so far into this mythology. You could save a lot of money if you just film 4 and 5 together. And they almost kicked me off the Universal lot.
Like, calm down, man. Calm down. Let's
You're lucky we're even making a fast forward. I'm sorry.
I mean, very important question. How many films do you think we would have gotten if the original title of Red Line had stuck? Like two red, two line doesn't really have the same ring to it. No. I don't know. What do you think? Could we have been? Would we be sitting here with Red Line?
It was called Red Line, and I wanted to keep Red Line, and because I just wanted to, because I've been thinking Red Line, right?
Yeah.
And it was Neil Moritz who called me and said, I got the title. And this was right before we were about to open the movie. So around that time when I shared with you that they were moving the date to the summer, and I didn't understand what that meant, and I thought, are they going to will this movie ever come out?
Yeah.
Please come out. I was like, I didn't know anything about dating movies. And so at that time, there was another call from Neil Moritz, who, where he said, I got the title. I think it should be The Fast and the Furious. And then it just grew on me.
Yeah, at first you're like, wait, so you want to push my movie a couple months and change the title?
What's going on?
What is going on here?
I was so, because, I had the big dreams when I went to Sundance. When I went to Sundance a couple of years earlier, we had heard all this, about films going to Sundance and selling for all this money and getting picked up and getting distributed. And mine didn't get distributed. So there was always that fear, like, if you push it, are you going to shelve this movie? Is anyone ever going to see it? So that coupled with name change, you could see how you could be.
Yeah. Some worries there.
Yeah.
Then we'll wrap up with what we were calling the finish line, and kind of rapid fire questions about the film and the franchise. So I guess I would the first question. This idea came from me because of you being in Tokyo Drift, like you getting dropped in, especially after they had already filmed the movie, and then they drop you in. So say we have a time machine and we could go back and add someone to this first Fast movie. We're not replacing anybody, but we're adding, maybe it's someone who came in a Fast film later, or just an actor you think would have been a great fit. Like who we going in the time machine and putting in Fast 1?
I guess if I were to think where we're going with the next chapter, and Michael Caine, I might have found a way. If you're saying if I could have redesigned the mythology or added little elements of the mythology, I could have done something with Helen Mirren and Michael Caine's character and played something out. I could have introduced something in the future.
That would have been amazing.
We're not giving up on that. We still got a few films to make that happen. Then each episode we have what we're calling Derek's embarrassing story of the week, where I kind of maybe they're not embarrassing, but it really shows my fandom. And usually we just have one, but I have a few for this one. So I'm going to let you pick which is the most embarrassing Derek story of the week here. So we'll start number 1. I went as Dom for 2 straight Halloweens. Not just 1, 2 straight Halloweens.
Amazing.
So
that's the best. It can't be
I don't know. Hold on.
All right. I like it.
So last March, it was like the 30th day of, where the world shut down. We're in quarantine. I decided to take a drive over to the Toretto house. I had always wanted to go. I went over and I checked out the Toretto house, and then I walked down the street to the Toretto shop, which I did not realize was right down the street.
Close.
I did not realize that. So, and I walked in and bought a Corona. Of course, I had to do it. So that's
so awesome.
That's number 2.
That's so awesome.
We got 2 more coming, so we might still top these.
Oh, okay. That was awesome.
Number 3, my parents came to visit a few years ago. We're driving down the PCH. We drive past Neptune's net, and I'm like, that looks familiar. And then I immediately was like, Fast 1, Dom, Brian, meal there. Let's go eat. We go eat.
So many memories. So many memories.
What is this for?
It's directions. To race wars. We'll see how you do. Then we'll talk.
Not only do we go eat, my stepmom happily recreates the shot of you and Paul sitting there, like leaning over the table, and that is one of my most prized possessions. So
that's so awesome.
And then lastly, I'm wearing a Toretto shirt, so that's number 4. So we'll let you. What's the number? What's the best? What's the story there? Whether it's most embarrassing, whatever is your favorite of those 4.
The most embarrassing of 2 Halloweens.
Who repeats a costume? That's fair. At least space it out. I know. I deserve that.
That's awesome. No, they're all, by the way, Derek, they're all wonderful stories. And that's why I always enjoy talking to you about this franchise, because you appreciate it, and that makes all of the efforts, all the hard work, all the perilous stunts and action sequences that myself and my amazing stunt team always do. It makes it all count, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate you for allowing me to have a costume to dress up in 2 times a year.
Why did I think of that? You know how many years I've gone not knowing what to wear, not knowing what to be? What am I thinking? It's right there. It's staring at me in the mirror.
Wrapping up, kind of, we've talked around F9 a little bit, but what would be your maybe tease? Obviously we have a first trailer, we got a second trailer coming. So what would be your tease of what we can, when we're finally back in theaters? Might be the most anticipated movie of all time, at least for me. I'm biased, but yes. But what would be your F9 tease for all the fans out there that have been patiently waiting?
There's so so much good stuff. The whole world has this kind of excitement about this movie coming out. But for those that have been with the franchise, it's even more special because if you could remember the first movie, you are now going to go. You're going to go before the first movie and understand the first movie even more. I don't know if that's I'm saying that's cool stuff. I'm a D&D head, so that's like origin stuff.
Yeah.
It's just to see family members you never thought you would have seen is gonna kind of blow your mind.
That's beautiful.
To see we've been wanting to know what poetry where was Dom before he became Dom? Like, who was his influences? That's going to be really rich with story and a lot of fun to see.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that too, because that makes me, my first thing that came to my mind was that Fast Five scene with you and Paul on the balcony, talking about your dads, so yeah, no, I love to hear that maybe we'll get a little peek going back.
Yeah, I was also thinking too that there's so many callbacks in other movies. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, what's something that you'd love to be able to bring back? But it sounds like the best is yet to come there.
The best is yet to come.
Paul would say. That's what I was gonna say. The best one's still in the can, always. You're gonna do the last one. You're still gonna be thinking that in the back of your head. You'll be like, but Paul said the best one's still in the can.
I will always think that. That will always be, and bless him for that, and bless him for adding that momentum, that motivation to always reach higher and making it something that has reverence and significance and reminding us all to never rest on our laurels, but to earn every part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know the second trailer will be out by the time people hear this. And I know there's a little fun Paul, nod we get in that. So I think we're all excited to see that bit of it too. Vin, I'm glad we didn't just almost have you. We actually had you. So hopefully hopefully we earned your respect, and thanks for becoming a part of the Binge family. We always love to talk to you.
Always. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was beautiful.
Love, guys. Love.
Yeah, right back at you, Vin. Thank you.